Hey everybody, welcome to your horoscopes for the week. These are the horoscopes for the week ending November 12th. And we got some really interesting stuff taking place this week, good and bad, which is always nice because it's nice when you kind of balance it out. The world exists with both, but it would be nice to, at least have more good than bad, or at least balance it out. It makes things difficult when you can't do that. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and jump right on in to see where all the fun stuff is. And we are going to, of course, kick off with Aries, as we always do. Couple of things going on in Aries. Jupiter is still on the cusp of Aries. It is in Pisces, 29 degrees in retrograde, so it's moving backwards into Pisces. And as it moves each degree away, the influence becomes less and less until it turns direct and then comes back. And then we'll be dealing with that again later into the first few months of the year next year, and then it moves on. But we are going to kick off the week with the moon in Aries, and that's actually going to be a bit more of an influence, I think, than Jupiter really is. Focus is on how you think about things. That's how you perceive things. That is the direction that you perceive things. And believe it or not, we make choices every single day when circumstances take place, which they do fairly often every single day. We make the choice to perceive it as a good thing or a bad thing. Now, granted, there's many things that you are bad that you really just can't perceive in a good way, but humanity has come up with different ways of being able to do that. For instance, when you see someone who's been, or know someone that you love who's been sick and uncomfortable for a long time and they pass away, one of the ways of looking at it, you could always look at it as, I've lost this person that I love, sure, and you're going to no matter what. But you can also look at it as, this person is free of pain and not suffering anymore. And that sort of takes something that is bad and puts a little bit of good into it. And with the moon influencing this, we're talking about emotional perception anyways. So most of the time when something makes you angry or triggers an emotional response, for the most part, as human beings, we tend to just go ahead and let that emotional response rule every decision that we make from here on out, which is not necessarily always the best course of action. And in many cases, makes a small thing much bigger than it needs to be. With the moon squared with Pluto, Pluto's focus is right in the middle of the house of self and the house of secrets, which is really represents that deep emotional stuff that rules a lot of the decisions that we make, whether we choose to believe that or not. Most of the time, that is what happens. So you have emotion on top of emotion, which can create a little bit of a emotional response. But if you look at the situation in a different way, give yourself a couple of seconds to cool down, Rams. I know that's difficult, but give yourselves a few minutes to cool down and look at the situation in a different perspective. Maybe even taking your own feelings about what you want to happen in the situation out of it. It does change the course and the way that the situation looks. So at times, losing your job, which is a catastrophe, because how are you going to pay your bills and pay your rent and all of these things, actually turns into a much better opportunity a week later that you probably never would have taken had you continued with that job. So perception is everything. And I feel like the biggest lessons always happen during extreme emotional duress, because we really wouldn't be paying attention if we weren't going through such a big major challenge. The moon is also really helpful as it moves into a grand sextile with Mars and with Saturn. Saturn's focus is on self and the responsibility to self. Mars's focus is on those you love. It this also kind of helps you to see, and I know that Aries women especially, but I'm sure there are Aries men out there, but I know there are Aries men out there that are like this, are very family oriented, and they do tend to sacrifice for those that they love a lot. This kind of lineup kind of sort of shows you that yes, that is absolutely true. You're absolutely right. But who's going to take care of them if you don't take care of you? And so it takes you out of that expectation of I'm taking care of these people because I know they'll do the same, and puts you into more of a realistic expectation, which is I love these people and that's why I care for them, but I'm going to take care of me for them also. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Taurus. We continue to have Uranus in Taurus, and we have Uranus in opposition with the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, as well as squared with Saturn, which creates a T square. So we're just going to go ahead and open up with, let's have another big old challenge, shall we? Yay! And I'm actually checking ahead because no, we're not quite there yet. Okay, that challenge is not going to get bigger this week. Next week it will, because of course all of these planets are in Scorpio, which is opposite of Taurus. And then of course we continue to have Saturn in Aquarius. Kind of feels like he's going to be there forever, but not necessarily. He's leaving, I swear, he's leaving. Um, Uranus is still retrograde this week, continues to be retrograde this week. I think the retrograde ends next month, at least if I recall. One of them ends next month. Unfortunately, I do not have it right here in front of me. Let's talk about this challenge here. Uranus in a T square with Saturn. Saturn's focus is on self. Taurus and Uranus's focus is on how you think about things, your perception of things. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus are all kind of sort of a little bit focused on career, a little bit focused on long-term goals, probably long-term career goals, since they work together so very well. All of these planets, of course, are in conjunction, so they're working together for a good cause, but they're all part of this challenge. So you're talking more than half of the planets in the zodiac are all involved in this challenge right now, which can make things pretty heavy and pretty hectic when you think about it. In terms of your perception, though, this is very interesting. Uranus is all about going out of the box. It's about rebellion against the way things are. It's about change, um, specifically change that is needed and has been needed for a long time. When Uranus goes retrograde, though, that sort of mirrors all that back, takes it back to like more of a traditional way of doing things, and it even represents in some cases wanting to make a change and just feeling like everything is getting in the way of you being able to do that, which is really frustrating when that happens. In opposition with the Sun, Mercury, and Venus, when you're talking about trying to put together these goals, a plan of action towards your career goals, and it's like everything that you do to try to do that seems to be leading in a direction that is not successful at all. In fact, it's leading in the direction that this isn't going to happen. When these types of situations happen for most of us, most of the time, we just throw our hands up in the air and go, I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, so I'm just not going to do it. The truth is that timing is everything. You never try to plan out a goal that you want to do only once. If it doesn't work the first time, set it aside, see if things come up that maybe point you in that direction, or pick it up 6 months later and see if maybe the timing there is a little bit better. Either way, a lot of the time, we also find ourselves hitting these blocks because we're missing something. So we have the bulk of the goal pretty much set up, but we may be missing something really important in that goal, like how much money am I going to make in terms of these career goals. How much money am I going to wind up losing because of these career goals? That's really important information. So if you're trying to move from being a doctor to a specialized nurse, you're going to want to know that there's a possible pay cut there. And if that's a problem, maybe you need to restructure your goals a little bit. All of this, of course, includes Saturn, and Saturn is very much planted in your responsibilities to yourself. And this can also be a big clue why you may be setting up goals that it just feels like are not going through right now, and everything is coming in to sort of stop you from being able to move forward. You may not be realizing that there's something about what you're doing that is going to be exhausting for you, or it's going to bleed you of your finances, or it's not good for you in some way. So I kind of look at this is a little bit of an extreme example, but somebody deciding that they want to run drugs and make millions and millions of dollars, and they do everything that they possibly can to plan that out, but every single thing just seems to get in the way. The cops keep showing up all the time, or, obviously that's the universe saying, hey, there's something wrong with this, right? And if your goals are, if you already don't have a lot of time and you're trying to set up things that are going to take up even more time than that and possibly suck you dry, chances are the universe is going to come in and say, hey, slow down there, buddy. Let's see if we can do this in a way that's not destructive towards yourself, right? So, all of that being said, that's what I have for you guys this week. Moving on to Gemini. Focus is on those you love this week, and we still have that retrograde Mars in there, of course. Not going anywhere anytime soon. He's going to be there for a bit. Mars is an interesting planet in this position. Mars is very aggressive, ambitious, kind of like a flame underneath your rear to really get you focused and moving in a specific direction. And retrograde almost takes that motivation away, if that makes sense. Now, Geminis are highly motivated individuals that can't sit still if they tried. At least most of the ones that I've met, they cannot sit still if they tried. And to have this burst of more energy than you really need with Mars, and then to have that sort of simmered and taken away, I really feel like in many cases, this sort of simmer has to do with how you interact with those around you in a big way, if that makes sense. Now, in terms of family units and Geminis, I'm not saying that Geminis are not good family people. They actually absolutely are. I know several Gemini women that, are just some of the best mothers out there because they put a lot of time and energy into the people that they love. When you're talking about taking that energy out in terms of Mars retrograde, I feel like this is going to play out in many different ways. I know one in particular who's had some health issues and gone through surgeries, and the normal amount of energy that she puts into her family, she can't, because she's literally putting it into herself in order to be able to heal from everything that she's been through. So it's going to play out in circumstances to where even if you want to help your family, you can't. And the universe does that for a very interesting reason, actually. In many cases, people don't learn unless they're forced to actually go through the lesson. And if you have gotten older and you have a generation below you, whether you have children or nieces and nephews or what have you, and you're all of a sudden realizing that the words that are coming out of your mouth to these kids, so to speak, are the same things that came out of your parents' mouths. You're trying to teach these kids an easier way to do something that they're doing in a very difficult way. And the truth is, the only reason that you learned the easy way is because you did the difficult way first and realized that it was a lot more complicated than it needed to be. But the kids aren't listening. They never do. We didn't, right? We didn't listen. So why do you think they're going to listen? It's repeating that same concept over and over again, which is actually wearing you out. It's putting energy in a direction that is not going to be used. So why just throw that energy out the window anyways? It's, yes, I get that you're an energetic person, but really, as we get older, we do not have a reserve of extra energy to plug into later on. Which just does not exist. So I feel like this is really happening for a reason right now, to kind of put you and with Mars' trine with Saturn. Saturn is all about responsibility to self. So this just kind of adds another layer and says, yeah, no, sometimes you got to take care of you. That's more important than what you can do for others. If you're asked, of course, and you can, yes, you should always be there for your family, and you should always help out your family as much as you can, but don't feel guilty when you can't. And I think that's probably the hardest lesson of all. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Cancer. Cancer is focused on your day-to-day schedule this week, with Pallas Athene continuing to influence your sign and currently influencing that day-to-day schedule. Pallas Athene is known as the warrior queen, and I feel that this is really important for you guys this week. Actually, Cancer is a cardinal sign. Definitely more energy than a fixed sign, but not quite as much as a mutable sign, which tends to be all over the place. And I think that one of the benefits of the cardinal signs is that rather than constantly think about what they want to do, which is tends to be what fixed signs do, or come up with something and start on it immediately and never finish, which is what mutable signs tend to do. Cardinal signs are the ones that come up with the plan, lay down the blueprints, build the building, get it done. And we need that, obviously, in our lives, because each one of the modes has their job to do. However, the downside to the cardinal signs is the fact that things have to be perfect. Otherwise, what's the point in putting it out there? And while that little bit of element of perfection is good because it motivates you, it also holds you back because it'll never be perfect. At least it will never be as perfect as you want it to be. And I feel like this warrior queen energy going towards your daily schedule is helping you to really put time into your creations. A lot of the time we say we don't have time, we want to do this and we want to do that. And the truth is that Cancers, even though they're a cardinal sign, they do have that sort of fixed mentality of, I have all these ideas of things I'm going to do, but not actually getting started on it. This week, it's time to really just sit down, create your schedule. This is what I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, and get these things done so they're not floating around in your head. It feels different. Even if you just start a project, it feels different. It no longer feels like it's stuck inside of you. You're starting to be able to give life to that project in some way, shape, or form. And these are projects I really feel have meaning to you in some way. They're nurturing for you in some way. It's really important that you take the time to do this. And that's why it's important to put that time, write that time down into your schedule. In all honesty, most of us, when we say we don't have time, it's not so much that we don't have time. There's just a million things in life that are there available to waste time. And so while I agree that wasting time is a good form of self-care, you can waste way too much time, and then it goes on the wrong end of the spectrum. This week, it's time for you guys to take control of those things that have been on the back burner way too long. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And we're moving on to Leo. Focuses on relationships this week with not a whole lot to influence it, as there are no planets in Leo this week at all, whether they be major or minor influences. We will have the moon coming in next week, and that is going to create like a great big giant drama. But this week, no, we just won't think about that this week. Focus is on relationships. And of course, there are many different focuses for relationships. Most of the time, our focus is on the relationships that are right in front of us, good, bad, or indifferent. And in all honesty, as much as I have worked with many different people who have challenges within their relationships, it's very important when you have relationships, good or bad, challenges, lots of challenges or very few challenges. The importance really is in how you look at those challenges, or I should say, how much time is focused on those challenges. From my own personal experience having relationship challenges with certain members of my family, I have found, in the past, when things started to get difficult, it sort of spiraled out of control and became more and more and more difficult. And it was impossible to see anything good within those relationships. And in all honesty, with my dad specifically, looking back after losing him 5 years ago, looking back, it's a shame that those things got in the way of the last few years of his life. And I feel like we all go through something like this where we regret how we left certain relationships or how we lived certain relationships, but then we don't learn with the next difficult relationship. So I feel like this week's focus really is on those relationships that don't exactly feel good all the time, that there's going to be communication challenges or challenges within the relationship in some way, and trying not to focus as much on the negative as you can focus on the positive. I have a client who is a Leo, who has these challenges, and in many cases, it can be really hard to find anything good in the relationship to focus on. Which is a big challenge if that is a challenge that you have in that relationship. So sometimes I feel it's necessary, and I go through this with my mother because she's my living parent that I've also had challenges in the relationship with. Sometimes I have to dig pretty deep to find those positives. Almost like I'm making it up to a certain extent. Whatever it is that you need to do, it is better than regret. So that's what I have for you guys this week. Moving on to Virgo. Virgo's focus is on money this week with a little bit of an influence of relationships from Ceres, which is also in Virgo at this time. But let's not look at relationships so much as our relationship to our money, our relationship to our finances. This is a thing, actually. And to be honest, most people do not have a healthy relationship with their money. They do not have a healthy relationship with their money. Um, and it's kind of an interesting thing when you choose to look at it. And when you choose to look at your relationship with money honestly, you will find a lot of things to be surprised about, I'm sure. I know I have, and I still find a lot of things that make me go, that I didn't realize. One of those things would be that your mindset, your money mindset, and the way the relationship is with you and your money actually roots in childhood, which is very, very interesting. I never thought that I would have any emotional roots about money that came from childhood, but I was wrong, dead wrong about that. Turns out I have some very deep and serious emotional roots about money from my childhood that I didn't think would have any effect on me whatsoever. Ha ha to me. Funny, funny. Anyways, understanding your relationship with money is really important, actually, because without understanding how your relationship is with money, you can't make changes to better the relationship, which if you were in a relationship with a person, you would probably do. And likewise, the person that you're in the relationship with would hopefully do the same. And your money will change how it works for you. And when you change your relationship to have a positive relationship with money, things in other aspects of your life start to change with it. It's actually really bizarre how that happens when we release that control or and the thought that we control money, because we don't, and actually look at it as a relationship, as two things that are working together towards a common goal. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And we're going to move on to Libra with no planets influencing Libra. Focus is on long-term goals this week. And nothing to focus or sway your opinion on your long-term goals. This is actually a perfect time to just sit down and figure out what your long-term goals are. If you don't know what they are already, of course, or maybe even add a couple of new goals to the list of things that you already are working on currently right now. I feel it's very important also that when you're coming up with ideas, what you want to do, or you're identifying where you are and identifying where you want to end, what the beginning is and what the end is. It's also important during that time to come up with and figure out the steps to get from here to there, if that makes sense. So many people don't do this, and it's the same thing year after year after year after year, and before you know it, 10 years have gone by and you've been in the exact same place doing the exact same thing, maybe even making the exact same money, and unfortunately not progressing in any way. These little things happen from here to there that make it seem like you're progressing. Maybe you got a few raises, whatever, but you're not actually progressing. You're not getting better at what you do. You're not looking at options that might actually work better for you than the option that you're in. So sitting down and really understanding what you want from these goals, but the ultimate, it's very funny, but most people don't realize what they want out of their goals either. They just know that they want to get from here to here. They don't really understand what about that is going to benefit them completely. Understanding what you want really does help you to see a clearer picture of the direction that you need to go in. And once you have that sorted and figured out, it's like a piece of cake from there. But if you haven't made the decision, the universe doesn't know which way to go. So think about that while you are creating those goals and creating a plan for those goals. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And we're going to move on to Scorpio because it's all happening in Scorpio right now, as we've got the Sun, Mercury, and Venus all in Scorpio in a T-square with Uranus, as well as Saturn, which is going to be a bit of a challenge for you guys as well as them this week. Focus is on career and long-term goals, long-term career goals, in opposition with Uranus, which is focused on how you think, how the mind works, and squared with Saturn, which is focused on self. This is a bit of a challenge, but this is a bit of a challenge that can be worked through quite easily, actually. It's not the worst challenge in the world when you think about it. There are worse ones. First of all, in terms of long-term career goals, whether this is about changing jobs, whether this is about promotion, moving up, education in order to move up, what have you, regardless of what these particular career goals are, what's really important is to understand how to set these goals up in a way that is going to be the most beneficial. I think, in all honesty, we're talking about fixed signs here. Scorpio is a fixed sign, as well as Aquarius and Taurus, which are also very heavy influences on this particular challenge here. Fixed energy is stubborn. It doesn't want to move. It doesn't want to change. It wants things to continue to be exactly the same as they always were without ever changing a thing. That is not evolution. And I say this as a fixed sign myself. That is not evolution. We cannot grow without some sort of change. So it's really important that you are specific about what you want in your goals, but you're not so specific that you absolutely can't get what you want. And I feel that this is a good example for Scorpio for whatever reason. But in the movie Practical Magic, Sally made up this spell that to call on a boy, the boy that was meant for her, but she was so specific about the details of him that she thought he would never exist. Turns out he did, right? And that's the movie. If you're over specific about what you want, I mean, too nitpicky, you're never gonna find it. It's just gonna elude you forever. So you do want to keep that in mind, of course. Also, how you think about the problem has a direct influence over how you approach the problem. If you approach the problem as in it's a huge challenge that you can't get past, you're just going to get frustrated and you're not even going to try. Or you're going to do everything that you possibly can, wasting your energy completely, by the way, on trying to do things the hard way in order to force what you want, which is also not going to work. Okay. Not necessarily the best way to do things. Saturn is focused on self. This is your responsibility to yourself. This is your responsibility to your goals. And I feel like that stubbornness is going to come out against that in some ways as well, because let's face it, fixed signs don't like to be forced to do anything, even if it's good for them. Okay. And if you feel like you're being forced, chances are you're not going to do it. So that does create a little bit of a challenge. Basically, bottom line, don't get in your own way. Don't let the fear of what this wonderful success could be force you to get in your own way. We do have a grand sextile, I should say. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus are in a grand sextile with Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto. We're almost interacting with all of the planets here. It's kind of crazy. Grand sextiles are extremely helpful aspects. So again, this is something that's going to help us with a huge challenge, which is good. Pluto's focus is on the inner closet. There's very, very deep emotional things that you Scorpios are so good at burying and hiding for like ever, so that nobody ever finds them. And Jupiter and Neptune's focus is on the past. This is actually kind of bringing up and showing you different times in the past where you were successful, and kind of challenging you to look at that and to take some things from that, not necessarily focusing on the bad things that happened, because in every situation there is, but to focus on what you did that worked and take that, while leaving the stuff that didn't work back in the past where it belongs, because we don't need to work with that, right? So that's actually kind of gives you a little bit of an outlet of being helpful in a way, just providing that you don't get stuck on in that past loop of just pining for to go back to when things were easier, because that's definitely a time waster, unfortunately, and that's not something you want to do. So that's what I have for you guys this week. We're going to go ahead and move on to Sagittarius. No planets in Sagittarius, no planets giving any kind of influence to Sagittarius this week. Focus is on your support system this week. And I feel that that's really important. Most of the Sagittarians that I know are the support system, in all honesty. Self-proclaimed support system, really. And I love it. I absolutely love and adore that. However, a lot of times they're not getting the support that they need. And either they're not asking for the support, or they're not asking for it in a way that they're getting it. If that makes sense. The other thing I love about Sagittarians, which a lot of people don't, is that Sagittarians have a tendency to be very cut and dry and to the point. They don't mince words. They just tell you what you need to hear, even if that means that you need to hear that you are not being very supportive right now. I feel like I can agree, because I'm very much like that. However, in my experience, it doesn't get me very far either. It actually pisses people off, even if that's not my intention. So this week, I feel it's really important to understand, if you're not getting the support that you need, to understand, maybe to figure out why you're not getting the support you need. A lot, if it's not demanding the support, there's another communication issue that the world has that comes up a lot, and that is that when you're directly asked, hey, do you need help with something, they don't say, yes, I need help. They just say, oh, well, I'm doing this and this and this and this and this, and it's not, that didn't answer my question, really. And then the person gets mad when they don't get the help, or they passive aggressively ask for the help. All of these things are just not going to work. If you need support with something, sit down, ask. Don't tell, ask. I need somebody to help me with this particular thing. I would really appreciate it if you could help me. That way that, with the two of us, we could get it done a lot quicker. You know, whatever it is that you need to do. But you do have to be mindful of how you communicate things, because how you communicate things really makes or breaks actually getting the results that you want. And if you're using negative communication patterns, chances are you're not going to get what you want. So keep that in mind. And that's what I have for you guys this week. Moving on to Capricorn, focus is on that inner closet this week. Scary. And I think that Capricorns, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about Capricorns and those emotional stuff that they hide in there. I have a Capricorn grandmother, let me tell you, okay? Almost her entire life went by before certain secrets that impacted her emotionally came out. Almost her entire life. And I don't feel that they came out because she couldn't take it anymore. I feel like they came out because she finally felt that it was time for people to understand why things happened the way that they did. And she just blurted it out one day. And that was that. Um Capricorn's whole thing is very, very, very deep. And a lot of people don't think that about Capricorns because they don't come across as emotional people. And it's not that they're not emotional, they're just like kind of get on with it kind of people. So if something's got to be done, just get up and do it. You know, don't talk about it, don't complain about it, don't try and plan it out, just do it. Um, Pluto is still in Capricorn. Will start to leave next year, but for the rest of this year, he's definitely still sitting in there, influencing this house. Pluto is your source and sense of power. And what does that have anything to do with your emotional health? Well, there's a lot to do with your emotional health. If your emotional health is bad, you're going to use power in a bad way. If you have a healthy emotional health, then you're going to use power in the right way. And so it's important when you go through specific situations this week, you want to make sure that you are using your power for the highest good of all, including yourself, and not allowing negative emotions about something that happened in the past create one of those instances where you're misusing your power in order to feel better about the situation. It's a very fine line and it can be very tricky, but it really comes down to you are having a conversation with somebody, they say something that rubs you the wrong way, and you have two options. You allow your feelings to answer, and it's going to usually going to be harsh words or something hurtful or a direct attack, or you take a moment, you realize that this is not about you, this is about them, and you brush it off and say something that's going to put out the fire. It is literally as simple as that. Pluto's grand sextile with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter, that's like half the zodiac right there, is actually very helpful also in terms of taking the time to heal those old wounds, as it gives you a direction as to why you want to heal those old wounds. Neptune and Jupiter's focus is on the past, and the Sun, Venus, and Mercury's focus is on long-term career goals. And of course, we don't want anything getting in the way of us making that money, right? I mean, come on, we're talking about Capricorns here. So yes, I think that in terms of going through their emotional healing, Capricorns just get it done, just like they do everything else. And all of that, of course, is going to help you guys with that. So that's what I have for you guys this week. Moving on to Aquarius, we still have Saturn in Aquarius in a T-square with the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Scorpio, and Uranus, of course, in Taurus. So that's not going to go anywhere, unfortunately. Next week, the moon is going to move into opposition with Saturn, making it a big old mess, even more than it already is. So I guess we'll just enjoy what we've got this week and look forward to that mess next week, right? I want to think about that this week. I'll think about it next week. In terms of Saturn, focus is on self. And actually, this is very interesting for Aquarians, specifically in terms of responsibility to themselves. Actually, most Aquarians are very much up on their responsibilities to themselves. They understand they have a responsibility to themselves and they're okay with it. Bottom line, they're okay with it. Not to say that Aquarians are selfish and self-centered. That's not the case. But Aquarians, I feel, understand more so than most of the other signs how important the temple is, that without the temple, nothing else gets done, kind of a thing, which can make them a little more selfish and self-centered, or appear to be a little bit more selfish and self-centered. That makes sense. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus are focused on long-term career goals. Uranus is focused on the mind and how the mind works. We're talking about Aquarians here. Overthinking is a thing. Of course it is. It always is. And it's kind of annoying. I'm not gonna lie. I'm an Aquarius, and I understand how annoying it is. By the way, you can turn that off, which I do on a regular basis, and it is awesome to listen to nothing but silence. It really truly is. That is part actually of what I'm getting for you guys this week. The truth of the matter is that when it comes to your long-term career goals, overthinking all the possibilities and what needs to be done and the outcome of that, and am I going to have enough energy for that, and am I going to have time for all this other stuff? I've wasted years, literal years in this place, and I'm done wasting those years in that place. It's not getting me anywhere, and it doesn't get you anywhere. And this week, that really is what it's all about, is about stop overthinking it. Write it down. You got goals, write them down. What do I need to do? Anything else that pops in your head, if it doesn't belong on the piece of paper, it doesn't belong in your head either. So you do want to think about it on those terms. Saturn's trine with Mars is actually very helpful because in all of this mess, it brings those you love into it. You would think it would make a bigger mess, but actually it's a help. So that instead of you sitting there wallowing in your head alone and never getting anywhere, you can consult with somebody that can help you make sense of everything and sort of map it all out and not necessarily waste all that time on all of that overthinking, which, by the way, is exhausting. I don't know if you've noticed, but it is exhausting. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And we are finally moving on to Pisces. We have Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces. Both planets continue to be retrograde throughout this week, and focus is on the past. Very interesting, actually. A lot of times when we focus on the past, we don't get anywhere. We think about how much better things were. We think about how we did all these things at one time and now we're not doing them now. We usually look back on the past as better than what we have now. And that is definitely not going to be helpful in any way, shape, or form ever, because it's unmotivating. Also, to have Jupiter retrograde sort of focus on that past shows you that you can't expand, grow, or move forward if you're stuck in the past, which is also kind of an interesting part of this as well. Both planets in a grand sextile with Pluto, the Sun, Venus, and Mercury. That's like more than half the zodiac all working together. The Sun, Venus, and Mercury are focused on long-term career goals, and Pluto's focus is on the internal self, the emotional center, so to speak. It's the place where we keep all of those past wounds in a locked up, safe place that we might deal with later. Um, and actually, the way that this is set up, it's actually using some of those emotional roots to your benefit. Most people wouldn't think, oh, my horrendous traumatic past is actually helpful to me. Well, it is. It can very well be helpful to you. I have sustained a very traumatic childhood with a lot of forms of abuse, almost every single form of abuse out there. And I am grateful to it every single day, because without it, I would never be able to help somebody who had been through something like that if I hadn't been through it too. And it gives me a personal link to that person. I really understand how they feel, being that I have walked in those shoes. So, yes, a lot of the time, past trauma is very beneficial to you. And in terms of your long term career goals, I also feel that this has a lot to do of working towards helping those who have been traumatized also, which is exactly what I did when I took my past childhood trauma and helped make it work for me so that I could help other people do the same thing, because I knew how wonderful healing was. I wanted to share with other people. So that's what I have for you guys this week. Very brave of you, by the way. And that's what I have for everybody. Thank you for watching and hanging out. Hey, donations are always welcome. If you love your horoscopes, I, of course, always appreciate it. And I always appreciate you guys and continue to appreciate you guys. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Thank you all for watching. And I will see you guys again next week. Make it a great week, everybody.